All right, welcome. As you can see, I'm in Bali. I arrived 6 days ago, and so far I've had 7 conversations with total strangers. And by the end of the conversation, they all ask me a variation of the same question. Lewis, you're so good at telling stories. How can I learn? Do you have any tips on telling good stories? How can I learn storytelling? So I thought I'd jump on here and give you guys some games. So make sure you take out your notepad, take some notes because it's going to be very valuable. Before we get into it, I want to make the distinction between 2 different types of stories. The first is traditional stories. Traditional stories is what you're going to hear and see on Instagram Reels, TikToks, YouTube videos, and movies as well. These are the stories that are more performative and you almost feel like you're on a stage talking to an audience. You turn into a different person almost. These are not the stories I'm going to tell you about in this video. I'll teach you about conversational stories. Conversational stories are the kind of stories that you're speaking to someone and out of nowhere you pull out a story and they lock into every single word that you say. So, why would you even want to learn storytelling in the first place? Well, that's a fair question. In the early 2000s, at the Princeton Neuroscience Institute, Yuri Hassan, a neuroscientist, set out to answer a simple question. What happens in the brain when we hear stories? And he put a guy in an MRI machine, which is a machine that measures brain waves and brain activity in real time. And he had him tell a story, and then he put other participants in the same MRI machine and had them listen to the story. And what he found was that the same brain structures, the same brain regions lit up at the exact same time in the storyteller and in the listener. Their brain waves literally synchronized. And that's extremely powerful because psychology says that in human connection, the #1 driver is the feeling of being understood and understanding the other person. In other words, relating to another person. And there's nothing more relatable than a human experience. We're all humans. So when you tell a good story, not only do you build relatability, rapport, but you also build trust. And, well, that's pretty much it. You build trust. You build a connection with someone. So, let's say you're on a sales call and you start telling a story. Immediately, you're going to build a rapport with the person. Your brainwave is going to synchronize. He's going to like you a little bit more, understand you a little bit more. And that's the beginning of trust. Also, it allows you to skip past small talk. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, I fucking hate small talk. Small talk is boring, it's shallow, and it feels forced. I don't like it. But as soon as I transition into a story, I build a connection with the other person, and what follows is the best conversation I could have had with that person. So, first, I'll tell you about what not to do. Because telling good stories is as much about what not to do than about doing the right thing, if not even more about what not to do. So first, like I said earlier, don't turn it into a performance. You don't want to become a different person. Imagine you're on a coffee date with a girl and then you start telling a story, but you literally change your personality while telling the stories. It's going to come off as being fake. It's going to be off-putting, and yeah, you're not going to have a good result out of that date. But second thing, don't tell the story in the past tense. If you're telling me a story about what happened 7 days ago, don't tell the story in the past tense. Bring me into the story as if it was happening right now. And the third thing not to do to tell a good story is don't turn it into a life lesson. When you're speaking to someone, having a casual conversation, meeting someone, a prospect on a call, don't give them a life lesson. That's just weird. Traditional stories are all about giving a life lesson, not conversational stories. It's about building rapport, building trust, and building a connection. So I'll give you an example of what not to do. You can ask me, what'd you do this morning? And I could tell you, well, this morning I meditated, I went to the gym, and I put some work in for my community. It's just a list. It's boring. And then I would ask you, what'd you do? And you would give me your list, and then we'd have to transition into another fucking subject. Boring. Instead, if you ask me, what'd you do this morning? I could tell you, well, this morning my alarm went off at 6:45, so I got up and I decided to meditate for about 15 minutes, and then by the end I had a surge of energy, and I decided, you know what, I'm gonna go on a run. So I put my running shoes on, I went outside, started running, came back 15 minutes later, and I had this feeling of, I was just proud of myself. I felt good. What about you? What'd you do this morning? Now you're much more inclined to share an emotional story or an emotional experience about your morning, instead of just giving me a list, right? So, a simple framework you can follow to tell a good story. First, we've got 4 elements. The first one is context. In the context, we've got 4 elements as well. We've got a time marker. So, this morning, that's a time marker. A place marker. I was in bed, got up. Then we've got who's involved in the story. I was involved in the story, I got up, and then we've got an action. So I got up and started meditating. Then the second element of a story is intention. So I told you that I had a surge of energy and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna go on a run. So I went on a run for about 15 minutes, and that is the response. The third element of a good story. What'd you do as a result of your intention? Did you follow through? Tell me about it. And the fourth thing is the result. What happened? Well, I told you I felt proud of myself. I was happy. So that's the result. And when you follow this simple framework, you'll have people lock in every single word that come out of your mouth. So I'll tell you another story. Yesterday, at about 12, I got on a Zoom call with my mentor, Hyder. And the first thing he asked me was, how's it going? Which is a pretty normal question. And instead of telling him, I'm pretty good, how are you? Which would have been boring, I said, 15 minutes ago, I was cooking eggs, and eggs in Bali come into a plastic bag. They don't come into a plastic container. So I took my bag and walked to the fridge, and I opened the door, and as I was putting the bag in the fridge, it ripped up and all my eggs fell on the floor. So I'm still emotionally recovering from that, bro. So how are you? And he was just laughing. We had a good time, and then we transitioned into the coaching call, but it was so different. The last call we had, I just said, yo, good, how are you? And it just almost felt robotic the entire call. But as soon as I told the story from the get-go, the entire energy shifted in the call. So, with all that being said, if you follow this simple framework, you'll be able to tell good stories. And I'll see you in the next video.